Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode of the Smarter Growth podcast. I have the pleasure today to talk to Patrick Trimpe, and Patrick is one of the first sales managers I had the pleasure to work with. And in the meantime, he started building his own businesses and started teaching other people. And Patrick is not only a constant inspiration to me, he also wants to introduce himself really quick. Patrick, welcome.
Welcome, Max. Glad to be here at your podcast today. I'd like to introduce myself. You said real quick, so do you give me like 30 seconds or what would you?
As much as you need.
Thank
You've
you.
got so much interesting stuff to talk about, I know.
Yeah.
Take your
Real pleasure to be here, Max. Because, well, I learned a lot from you in the past, and I'm still using all those amazing techniques that we practice together so many times. But my sales career started, I think, during my studies. I studied political economy at university in Switzerland. And while I was studying, my parents didn't have a lot of money, and they were like, well, if you study, you have to finance yourself a little bit. You have to support us. I have 3 sisters, and so it was a bit tight money-wise. So they said, hey, it would be good if you'd work. And then I was looking for a job in my first bachelor year. And what I found was a franchising company that would support me with education regarding financial consulting for small and medium enterprises, but mostly private clients as well. So that's where my sales career started, basically B2C, I'd say. And so I had my own office after like 1 year into the company. I opened an office. I worked with 4 of my best friends in that office, and it was quite a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to do that during the studies. I learned a lot. And so, but after 3 years into B2C, I had to say it has become quite boring. I have it's not very complex in a way what you sell, and also it becomes quite repetitive over time. So I wanted to study to do a master's degree in St. Gallen, but on the way there I was stopped by the founder of StarMind, Pascal Kaufmann, and so he asked, well, I had the chance to start at StarMind, an AI startup from Switzerland, started there. So I wanted to take the opportunity, 1 year in Switzerland, worked there, went on to Germany for 3 years, built up the German market for StarMind, moved on to New York, led the New York office for a year, and then came back to Switzerland and joined my friend's startup here a year ago. From basically 200,000 ARR, we are now at about 1 million. So it's going well for the first year. And yeah, sales is a lot of fun. I think you can constantly learn new things. You never stop learning, and that's what I enjoy, I guess. And so it's a pleasure. And also at StarMind, as you know, I learned quite a lot of stuff from new techniques, and that I think that I implemented at Larry as well.
And it was actually fun, like this. You know that I'm a constant believer in technology being valuable if we explain it in a way that people understand it, and that customers understand what to do with it and why they actually should use it, and what is the expected output and so forth. And one question I had on your university story, when you started that sales career, how old were you?
It was in 2009, so I was probably 20 or 21 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And you know, like for a lot of people who learn sales all by themselves, would you say someone can be too old to learn selling?
No, I don't think so. I think everyone can learn selling at any time of their life. I'd say.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, why not? It's not. I think sales is a very practical, right? That I think that I learned from you. I like sales, and it's obvious. Sales is a very practical, function or skill or whatever. It's very practical. So you can learn certain things by reading books and convince yourself of certain, approaches, how you do it. And there are a lot of good books about sales out there, but by only reading it, you're not going to get better, do you? I mean, a good example is when I started at StarMind, we would always, in the first meeting, we would start with a demo right away. We would demo our software, which is kind of not something you do at the first meeting. You want to first understand your customers' problems, and you want to first, make that very thorough, and to have a predictable pipeline and know whether the customer actually is ready to buy your solution, and also to present your solution in a way that makes sense for that customer, as you just said. Present your solution in a way that people can understand. So we did that, but besides, I read in books that this is not the way to go. I knew that you should do it differently. And so I tried it in certain ways at the very early years at StarMind, a little bit. I tried a little bit to ask a few questions at the beginning, but it never really was never really satisfying how I did it, and I didn't have the technique to, when somebody says, "Hey, I'm very happy to be in the call today, and I look forward to you to tell me about your solution." And then you're like, okay, your expectation is that I tell you about my solution. Yeah, that's my expectation. And how do you go about that? You don't learn this by reading a book, and there are no techniques in books that I found very working very well. And I never really practiced offline without a customer with my colleagues. This approach, I never perfected that approach. So, long story short, sales is a very practical function, and everyone can do practice every day. So I guess everyone can actually become a good salesperson.
And that's interesting because it matches my experience. And when I started really learning the craft of sales, right? Not the art part, but really the scientific part, the repeatable, the stuff that you can learn. I actually I had been messing around for 15 years or so, and I really had to pay for it, right? So I felt the pain, the agony, the despair, I had to live with the output I created when I sucked at selling. And my life improved only after I learned how to have these conversations and how to prepare for them, and not only the sales part, if you will, but also the things that you could say are more like on the marketing side of things, like everything around using Simon Sinek's wisdom, right? The golden circle, talking about why, and not only the what, and not only the feature, but also what it stands for, what you could do with it, all of those marketing things, headlines, and you're like, yeah, and I mean, this is like a science. We talked about it in a different conversation. All these little black holes, right, that can inhale you easily when you get started with these things. Some people completely disappear trying to do content marketing. Others completely disappear trying to do Facebook advertising. Some disappear trying to write their ebook and stuff. So very interesting experience you had there. And I think StarMind is a good example because they have a beautiful software, a completely new way to organizing teamwork around knowledge workers is really beautiful. And I understand, and that's the same for every technology organization. Like they try to show that stuff first because they think that's the big differentiator. And so it's usual that we try to pitch the product first at the tech organization. It's also usual that you read in books that there has to be a different way. But reading it from a book never helped me. It never helped me. And I think there's a reason for that. It's not because I didn't understand it, but it's this imagination and the confidence that was missing. I could not see myself do it just because someone has been writing it down in a book there.
Very good,
and then there's something else. Like when I read these sales tips and I see successful salespeople, I always ask myself, yeah, look, is that really comparable to my situation? Now, here's Patrick, right? He takes over sales at StarMine, for instance. He builds Germany, then he builds the US, but they have a beautiful product, right? They already know how to use the HDMI cable. They have a good demo. So a lot of salespeople we meet, they think that what they're missing is the good demo, or what they are missing is the good sales deck, the slide deck, right? Or they think some other resource is missing. And that's why we labeled this episode, if you had to start over, Patrick, if you had to start fresh, brand new, no demo, no product, no nothing, right? No, we take everything away. We take everything off the table. No customer list, no existing customers. You have nothing but a laptop, right? And let's imagine you had to start over at Larry, and maybe not even a wonderful, super special product, right? That would attract customers in itself. But it would all depend on you, right? Being that first a solopreneur inside the company, it's your responsibility to get customers and close the deal. First question: would you even consider doing it?
Sorry, would you even consider?
Yeah, would you even consider doing it? Would you even want to start over again?
Good question. I mean, if a year ago at Larry, I mean, you brought two cases. One is really starting from new, not having anything. I was in a good situation a year ago when I started brand new at Larry, first salesperson they had, but successful customers, or they had customers, and I could call them up and ask what they benefit from, to put down a list of all the most important use cases, and then approach other existing customers with those use cases, and which is the obvious approach when you have something. But I think in every startup, in every startup at StarMine as well, you always are going to be in the situation that you have to approach someone that you cannot, like, we don't have a bank as a client at Larry, unfortunately. We try, and it's tough. We don't have yet, but banks could be potential clients for us as well. And it's hard to get the first one on board. That's basically as if you would start from scratch sometimes, because the bank is like, okay, what clients do you have? What banks do you have as clients? And you're like, we don't have any. But still, I think we believe that this case could be interesting for you as well. So tell me, how do you do that today? You basically, you have to start from scratch in many ways as well. Still, even you work at a startup, Yeah, so I definitely would start from scratch again, because I think it's exciting. It's exciting to talk to talk to potential customers, to find out whether what you have is actually a pain out there. It's not, you don't just build a nice product and you find it exciting, but it's actually of no use out there, because you simply do not help to achieve a desirable result for the customer, or you do not solve a problem that is a priority out there. So that's the key things. And I do like, when I would start from scratch, I would definitely like it. What's gonna be easier is, if you don't have any customers, you can approach your potential customers by saying, hey, I have an idea. I really like to challenge that idea with you. do you have time for a call? Or, can I talk to you for 30 minutes because I'm interested? And people will do that actually quite often. I mean, you also give them something. You also have to give them something. You cannot just say, hey, can you have 30 minutes of your time because, I want to talk to you about this. Give them something back, potentially something they can benefit from. And many are open to learn about these things. So if you start really from scratch, that's going to be a fun part, I think, and people will like to talk to you, and you can learn a lot from whether you can be successful with your product. You should actually do that before you even start, before you even program something. Yeah, that would be a good idea. So I'm right now with other friends. I'm starting, or we are programming right now a new software. And one of my friends approached me with his business plan, with a business idea, and he said, "I have this business idea. Do you think it's good? And do you want to join?" Yep. I read the business plan, and I thought, like, as it is set up, it's not going to work. I said, but we didn't change anything. I said, what we're going to do, Michael is his name. Michael, what we're going to do also, and well, yeah, also as our common friend, Michael. So I said, Michael, what we're going to do before we even change anything, let's talk to these potential buyers. Yeah. So we picked up the phone on Saturday, called about 25 of these buyers. I put together a questionnaire with about 10 questions, like, what is your challenge today when it comes to that process? Where do you see yourself in 3 years? What do you think is going to stop you to get there, and so on. So a few questions that were neutral about the case. We didn't say we have this idea. I just started and said, hey, I have an idea with one of my friends, and I'd like to find out if we actually solve a problem with that idea. Can I ask you a few questions? No one said no time, go away. So we had this 25 calls, and then after that, we changed the business idea to something that could actually match those 5 key challenges that we got out of these calls. And that was very fun, I have to say. And so definitely, that was a long answer too. But yeah, I would definitely start again. And I think you can still be easily successful at just get out there.
Yeah, and it's interesting and super relevant. You said earlier that, I mean, if you had a product, or even if it looked like there was nothing, you would go inside the company and find something and find out what is that value, what is it that that makes this company special, what is it that people love about this company, and like you did at Larry, where you already had a few customers and they were successful, so they were using the services, the intellectual property, the software to achieve goals in their business. So you would try to find that. If you didn't even have that, you would go out there and make sure you start talking to potential customers tomorrow, right away, right? First thing you do is talk to the customer, find out what their priorities are, maybe even find out what the value is for them, and then start building around that, right? Building from there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And you seem to be very optimistic that it's still possible today. I mean, the marketplace is crowded, right? I mean, everybody's buying from one of these super large shops. You still seem to be optimistic that guys like you and me could build a new sales practice today. Is that
definitely true? It depends though on the region, I'd say. I mean, if I compare US and Europe here, I have to say, as a newcomer, or if you're a founder of a company and you want to do sales, and have not much experience in sales, it's much easier to start in Europe compared to the US, because in Europe you can scale a sales process at the very beginning. You can scale that much easier, and you can reach out to people in an easier way than in the US. In the US, without picking up the phone and start dialing like the Wolf of Wall Street quote, I'd say you no chance. Honestly, I mean, yes, maybe you get a few we like if you send out, let's say, 100 emails, let's take the example of cold emails. If you send out 100 of cold emails in the US, your success rate is going to be between 0 and 0.5%. So, and in Europe, you can still reach 15, 20% booking rates. You can. It's in no time, right? You can send, like if you take the cold email as an example, I mean, there are so many other approaches that you were talking about that I don't know for some of them, I don't know much of, like Instagram and Facebook and SEO and all that, these marketing, I'd call those the marketing tools, not necessarily B2B outbound sales tools. I mean, if we talk about that separation, still, I've never worked in a company that generated any inbound leads, which would be through these. But yeah, it depends where you find your audience, right? If you're in B2C, obviously, cold email or LinkedIn approach wouldn't work. It wouldn't be cost efficient anyway. It depends on how expensive the product is, but that's not. But yeah, in B2B, in Europe, much easier. In the US, a little harder, I'd say. I think you pretty early need someone who does this tough cold calling and, going through a certain sequence of cold calling, emailing, LinkedIn messaging, and so on, if we talk about outbound sales here. So yeah, it's harder there for sure. In Europe, easy, I'd say. Honestly, easy. I've done it with a lot of startups successfully. Not with those I work for, but I also help other founders in Switzerland, especially, to reach their audience, their potential customers, B2B customers, and it works still really well with not much experience.
And so very, very interesting also to see the correlation between how crowded this marketplace is and the inboxes, right? And how successful these campaigns are. And we don't want to make it too complicated here in this talk, right? If you imagine, like, what is the if we only had the product, like we said earlier, or we find something that is very special inside of a company that people love to use and that is really beneficial for the customer. My experience is sometimes that's even stuff people are giving away for free, like the first consultation or something, and they don't even recognize it's valuable. But the customer who's been talking to 20 or 30 shops didn't get that service from others and loves it, right? So sometimes it's even the sales process that people would love to pay for. It sounds counterintuitive, but there is this in most companies. There is this special DNA, this special one thing that people love. So if we only had that, and we look at the tactical level, so technically speaking, where would you start to build that new outreach?
I definitely, you mean you're talking about the sales, like specifically outbound sales, or are you talking about, you could also do like, I could, if I had a certain amount of money, or you'd spend it on marketing, sales, or product, or you use your assumption that we have a product and we want to reach a certain customer base. Am I on the right track here?
Yes, so anything you would really like to do, where you do not depend on magic, right? So you remain in control. Let's just imagine I have written this new software program, or I have an idea for a software as a service that would, I don't know, what can we develop? A marketing tool that would help you shell out Instagram posts every day. It will just pull the image, put some beautiful text on it, put your logo on it, and push it out to Instagram with a little text and few questions, right? So people can engage. So because I don't want to program the software, I hire a lot of people even before I code the software, I hire a team who would do it manually for customers. And now I talk to you and say, like, Patrick, you have a lot of experience finding customers. We need your help. What would be one of the first things you would do, technically speaking?
Definitely finding out the ICP for sure. I mean, that's the most important thing. If you want to reach out, if you want to gain customers, you need, you know, we talked about there are a lot of books out there in sales, and there is if you know the book Traction, there is 19 tools that you can use to reach out to the potential customers. Outbound sales is one, or let's say outbound sales all cold calling and then cold emailing and whatever, that's one. Then you talked about SEO, you talked about Instagram, or Instagram basically is SME, not SCM, for instance, and some others, targeted blogs and so on. But before you define how you reach out to your customer, you need to know who is your perfect customer, the company, the industry, and who of that, like what's the persona basically. So at Larry, we target regulated companies, which is financial institutions, energy companies, and we also target associations for two different personas. One is head of legal and compliance, and one is head of public affairs, those two personas. So I know exactly what personas, and I know exactly what industry. The better you know that, the more successful you're going to be. I can tell you already. I have seen many startups, and Starman was one of them, or is one of them, that struggles with finding a specific persona that you solve a specific problem for, or that you achieve a specific result for. So that's the first thing you need to find out. The more specific you can be, the more successful are you going to be. If you cannot be that specific, then yeah, well, you probably have to, you will have to increase the mass or try to change the product to a niche. I mean, that's from another book, Impossible to Inevitable, where first thing you need to do is nail your niche. It's going to be tough if you want to. If you want to be das eierlegende Wollmilchsau, no idea if there's
all things, all kinds of people, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's interesting. By the way, I'm taking notes here. We're putting both books. I'm linking both books under this episode here for people to read them. That's really funny because everybody and their brother is talking about the avatar, the ideal customer, the persona, and why it's so important. And most of the tech organizations we talk to, their feedback on that, they think this is a theory, right?
What?
They think that's a theory. They don't think it has anything to do with their practical sales approach. And the reason is always the same. The reason is, look, I'm doing Instagram posts, beautiful images. I'm putting text on them. I'm putting a logo on them. That's for everybody. Everybody needs this, right? So that's the typical feedback we get. And from your experience, I mean, you have been a successful sales manager in a software company and then in the next software company, and you're helping software companies. And a lot of these people have horizontal functional software, right? And still you believe, after everything you've seen, that these ideal customers, dream buyers, avatars, however you want to call them, that's an important thing. So there's got to be a difference between working with the ideal customer in mind and working without the ideal customer in mind. What's that difference?
The difference is difficult to say. I mean, you can. There is good approaches, even if you don't know your exact persona, to maybe get to a person that is interesting for you. But I take your Instagram example, Max. I don't use Instagram. I don't use Facebook. I don't use Instagram. So you're not going to reach me on Instagram. So let's say if there are certain personas, and I'd guess my persona that I reach, legal and compliance, head of legal and compliance. usually between 40 and 60 years old. Forget to reach those guys on Instagram. Forget it. You're not gonna, and still, for, I think maybe that's maybe a prejudice, but for B2B sales, B2B, I guess it's even more difficult to get into the serious context there.
Shoot. So I will change my automatic posting, smart ass software into a LinkedIn post generation software, so I can get you on board too, right? But if I understand you correctly, you say like understanding the dream buyer helps you pick the channel. It helps you make a wise decision on where to reach out to these people. What else?
Yes.
Is there anything else?
That you have to change from your sales approach, you mean, based on who your persona is going to be?
That the persona will help you do in terms of reaching different results, avoiding challenges, killing all the frustration. You know, like sales is very frustrating for most of people, right? I mean, nobody wants to do it. It feels like you're losing all of the time, right? And so forth. So, yeah, what else could that ideal customer understanding, envisioning, what could that help you do?
One of the obviously also most important things in that is the messaging, the messaging itself. You know, whatever you do, if you send out a LinkedIn message, if you cold call, if you cold email, if you put an Instagram thing, the content of your message needs to be targeted to those people. So if I write to a legal and compliance guy something that he's not interested in, like if I write to a legal compliance guy my public affairs message, like I say, hey, do you also struggle to keep your overview of political businesses in the pharmaceutical area? And the legal compliance guy would say, I'm not interested in political businesses. I couldn't care less about that. So you'd have to target your messaging based on that persona specific challenges and potential results.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you already have customers, don't reach a bank by saying Novartis is our customer or Roche is our customer, and therefore you also want to give that person not all people are first movers. You obviously need first movers, and there are still first movers in the startup world. Crossing the Chasm, another great book, where first you get the first movers, but to cross the chasm you need the early majority, and the early majority is only going to be your customer in case you have existing customers in the exact same industry. If you don't, it's going to be tough.
Okay, so it's because they want to learn from each other and they don't want to learn from some totally different animal.
Yes.
Then you say it helps you find the better messaging.
They don't want to, like, I think, I'm not sure about this, but I think one of the biggest fears of all those people, especially in big companies, is, they don't want to take risks. How many, and you know that, Markus, how many IT projects failed? 95%, right? We know, or 90%.
Yeah, it depends on how you define fail. But if we talk, I mean, if you ask like any customer in your first conversation, say like, when was the last time an IT project you had didn't deliver on the expectations? It's like they have 120% failed projects. And if you look at just investments or projects that didn't finish, for instance, I think that alone is 66% or something. And so with everything we know about managing IT projects and I mean, I would say that is discovered land, but still there's huge fail rates. I totally agree. Yeah. And you know what I find interesting is when you think that let's see our little tool that will post for you on LinkedIn now, right, every day, and beautiful content that will attract a lot of people and you like photo with quote and your logos and everything. I always think like different people would still use it in a different way to get to a different result. Maybe if I talk to I don't know legal advisors, they would use this mainly to build their authority. Other people, the chiropractor could use it to attract people directly into his business and give them like a free treat, so they could like get to know each other. And then a lot of software startups and tech startups find it helpful to talk directly to that person and say like, hey, if you are a chiropractor looking to get more customers, this software will help you get the attention, make the offer, and pull the people into your shop. And I heard something that is another book that we both love. I know you love it too. And a surprising hit for us when it came out in, I think, 2017 or so. The book is called Ask. It's by Ryan Levesque. And it's really interesting how you can write a book like 4,000 years after Socrates that helps people understand that asking questions can be helpful in some places. Also, you talked about our joint friend Michael earlier. This is also something that he could laugh about all day, because it's no news actually that we fare well when we give others room to express, right? If we ask. Yeah, and
wasn't there even an earlier version of that? What's the Dale Carnegie book? You know, How to Win Friends and Influence.
Influence people.
That's not in a business.
That's going to be a long
well,
list down there in the.
Yeah, definitely. We're even though reading doesn't help you to become a better sales, we read a lot, you know. And well, no, but you also have to practice. That's the thing. I think you always can find good ideas out of books, obviously, but you need to practice. And immediately, a practical book doesn't help if you just read it.
Yeah. Okay. So persona is important because it will. Ryan Levesque talks about perceived customization. He says, like, even if your product is the same for everybody, people want the feeling that it's for them, and they want to hear in their own words what it will do for them, right?
Exactly. Very true.
Yeah, even if we had, I don't know, a dating platform or so, it's different things to different people. It's another thing for a 42-year-old freshly divorced manager than it is to an 18-year-old girl, right? It's the same set of functions. It's the same set of features. It may have the same layout. It's still different. It has a different meaning to people. And to get down to that level of meaning, why people are there, why they are in business, and that will help you. And that is the pragmatic version. It will help you increase conversion rates, right? Will it?
Yes.
It will help you increase your pricing even for the same set of functionality. And it will help you be, and that is like the reason for the two, it will help you be more relevant to that specific audience. Now, the next thing people ask me, and that's also interesting, when we say like, hey, go into the niche, right? Have a target persona. Then the next thing I see on people's faces is fear. I'm not talking about a little, like a little worry. What I see is fear, and it's when you ask what's happening, they tell you that you're like, but right, if we focus only on these people, then everybody else will be lost, right? They will just swim. You're like, we will not work with them, and millions of dollars of potential revenue pass by. What do you tell those people?
Well, you need to focus your time on those that right now you have the best case, right? So you can target everyone, and maybe there somebody bites and maybe there someone bites, but if you target the right people, you will increase all the ratios, and you actually spend time with those people that you think you have the best case with. Actually, there's a pretty good example here with Documentum, a very famous. It's quite a famous, I think, startup from US, from Silicon Valley startup. that started around, I don't remember exactly, 1990, quite early actually. And so they tried the first 3 years, they tried to target all. They said, yeah, we can solve, so we have so many use cases for everyone, let's just, target everyone. But how do you do that anyway? I mean, what do you say? Do you use general, how do you do that? It's kind of, maybe you're lucky and some fish bites, but I think it's not very efficiently used time. So what they then did, they rethought their case. So they said, hey, we see the biggest, that's a hypothesis. So you have to build a hypothesis as well. So we think there is a case in regulatory affairs within pharmaceutical companies who had the biggest issue document certain things. So they said, okay, we only have about, they said, I think top 20 or 50 pharma companies, because we only can have the big ones because they have issues documentation and collaboration, cross-country collaboration is tougher for them. So they said we focus on the top 50 pharmaceutical companies in pharma, in regulatory affairs, which is like, I don't know, it's not a high number. It's maybe, I think, 8 to 10 million in yearly revenue they could make with those. So it's not, and all the others. I mean, they could probably make 100 million. Yeah, they could probably, but probably not as fast if they would say, okay, we target only this with a very specific case. And then they did that, and they actually, I think they won almost all of them within 1.5 years. And within 1.5 years, they were at 10 million annual recurring revenue. And from then on, they were in the companies. They learned about new use cases, or they could sell their other use cases to other departments of existing customers, which is much easier as we normally, I have to say, because it wasn't always, but it's normally much easier to target departments of already existing customers. So upselling is usually easier than new business sales. Not in a case where your product still sucks and you have issues rolling it out and do the change management. If that's the case, it's going to be harder to upsell. But if it's not the case and you do successful projects, then it's much easier and less time expensive. So that's one of the cases that were eye-opening in that way. I think that it makes sense to focus.
Yeah, and then is there something like the law of the one single niche or something? Like LOOSN, the loosen concept.
And what would that law be?
It's the law that tells you that you can only have one single niche, or the gravitation will kill you, or something. I don't know. Is there something like that?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, and that's what people are afraid of. They think if they think through one niche, they will stay there and just there forever, right? And most software, especially if we talk, we had this nice little like sub talk here, going from nothing to 7 or 8 figures, right? When you talk about 10 million in annual recurring revenue, and for companies going beyond that level, things change a little, right? All of a sudden you have to build a team and you have to do all the stuff that Aaron Ross writes in this book that you mentioned earlier, from impossible to inevitable. But going, and you like you did at Larry. I mean, you added like 500% to the revenue in a year. I mean, come on, right? You're 5 times as much revenue now than a year ago. So these numbers are crazy valuable, and everybody wants to get there. But what I hear from what you tell me is, I didn't hear you need to have content marketing. I didn't hear you need to have a successful YouTube channel. I didn't hear you say, get all the books written. I didn't hear you say, hire a big team. I didn't hear you say anything or any of those. So what do you really need to bring your small company that you love so much, to get that product out to people that you love so much, and for a good reason, because it's probably great stuff. What do you really need? What is the minimum to take that company to, we're talking about B2B, right? Software asset products, I don't know. What do you really need typically to take that company to 2 million, 5 million in annual recurring revenue from your experience?
Yeah, so all the things that we were already talking about, the niche, the ICP, so that the chip needs to be clear, need to be as focused as possible. And after that, it's just a scalable sales process, basically, for yourself as well. I mean, you know, when you are starting as a first salesperson in a startup, or you are the first salesperson, you have a limited amount of time. That's usually, well, no matter if you're a salesperson or not, it's always like that. But you have a limited amount of time. So you have to do all of it. You have to do prospecting, you have to do the meetings, the calls, you have to do the demos, you have to do the closing, and you have to write the contracts, and you have the negotiation, and so on. So the list is long of things that you have to do. So probably there's only a certain amount of opportunities that you could actually have in your funnel and push forward with the time you have. Yeah. So it's actually, I think, quite important, especially to automate the first part of this sales channel, like the find new people, contact those people, reach out to those people, and book the meetings. That part, basically the prospecting part, that needs to be very, like, you should always spend time there, always, never neglect it, because otherwise your funnel runs dry. And I think that was one of the main points why I had success at StarMind before, because I never neglected it. And even though we had people who did it for us, the SDR part, I always did it myself as well, because that's the only way you can ensure your own personal success, by doing the whole thing. If you're dependent on what an SDR will bring you in leads, or inbound marketing, as you said, like through content marketing, get inbound leads, then as soon as you're dependent on that, yeah, you might not reach your goals, but yeah, then whatever, it's still your fault, because you could have done otherwise. But the scalability of the sales process, I think, was one of the most important things. When I started at Larry, Eddie, the CEO who did the whole sales before, he simply couldn't manage to, he could not have, with his approach, he could not have brought $500,000 in a year. Maybe after 5 years and building up, like over a very, very long time, building up a funnel and with customers getting back. But he wrote every message. He wrote on LinkedIn a message to someone, hey, I have this. He wrote an email, hey, I have this. And he may have called someone, but not in not a scalable approach. And that costed him a lot of time. And whenever he had something else to do, he didn't do the prospecting. So no more new leads, and yeah. So if you want to be successful, very beginning, we have to be specific as well. I think we're talking about B2B with tickets above 5,000-10,000 a year. That's when salespeople it's becoming cost effective to hire salespeople. Below 5,000 a year, it might not be, to hire salespeople, and you can still sell the product cost efficiently. That's not necessarily the case. So if you sell 5,000 above, I think you should definitely start with outbound sales, not with content marketing and things like that, because that's for me. Well, I'd like to be in charge. For me, if you do content marketing, you play a little bit the roulette. Maybe people are there. Maybe at some point somebody you get an inbound lead through that. But if you actively reach out to people and you follow up, and they have to answer you, you get answers, you get meetings, you get good discussions, and you can find out what the challenges are. So I definitely build a scalable outbound sales approach to get from 0 to 1 million.
And that would give you predictability.
Yes.
And control. And you're saying all these marketing fads and trends and so forth, you don't think they are bad, but you would just do them later.
Yeah, I would. I think I would do them later. Definitely. Not at all. No, not at all bad. There are so many amazing instruments that you have, and don't get me wrong. So if you'd sell below 5,000 a year, like a software that costs $100 a month, let's say, so 1,000 a year, then I would definitely only do some marketing things. I would definitely do SEO. I would optimize there. I would build a beautiful website. I would build landing pages. I would take care of SME. I would SEM. I would advertise and so on, depending on where my customers are, because you couldn't reach out to people, cost effectively. If you, let's say it takes you 1 day to close a customer, and it will, you have 3 meetings with a customer, 1 demo, the preparation, the contract setup, and so on. So that costs you at least, let's say, 1 day or 2 days to acquire a customer. And calculating that, you get quickly to 1,000, and then you only sold it, but you don't know. Well, we have to probably calculate the customer lifetime value, which you can't at this stage. But if the customer acquisition costs equals the first year's earnings, it's not going to be enough. I think there's a formula. I don't remember it right now. You might know it, Max. A formula to calculate the customer acquisition cost. But yeah, like in terms of marketing, I'd build that later, definitely, because now still at Larry, I can say an additional salesperson would make me more money than one first real marketing person.
Yeah, and that's interesting, and I see a lot of startups. I see a lot of startups struggle when they try to build these marketing, like you said, like they make the product cheaper. That's the first impulse, which most of the time they should actually double the price and then try, right? But most of them just assume their product is too expensive. Then they reduce the price. Then they find out the price is so low they cannot distribute it through classical sales. And then they build the demo, the online demo, and the attraction, and then people should sign up for the software online and so forth. When at the same time, it could make a lot of more sense to put the software in a package, put the fly me to the moon service in that package, put the template in that package, and maybe even the workshops and everything the customer needs to succeed with your software. Because no matter how cheap the software is, people buy that stuff to become more successful because they have their own dreams. So most of the time, these alternatives get lost, because if you have a package that includes your little software, but all the other things, right? And that package costs $5,000 or $10,000. I love 10 grand more than 5, by the way. Then you can start selling it in a cold outreach way, and you can build all of those marketing things. But most organizations do it for the first time. They totally suck at it. They fail at it, like everything you do for the first time. But with cold outreach, the feedback cycle is a day, right?
Yeah.
You do it, bloody nose. You do it differently, bloody nose. You do it differently. Now you learn it. You can learn it from somebody else. You're like, I could learn it from you and get started tomorrow, right? We could talk to customers as soon as tomorrow. So I think that's the beauty of the outreach process, that you can absolutely influence what's happening, how much is happening. You can learn from it even, and you can see what you hear from customers and use that to build the marketing message.
Yeah.
And that's why I totally agree. I think that outreach is the most overlooked, most underrated tool in the marketing and sales concerto, if you will, because people are afraid to do it, because they think outreach means picking up the phone and having to call people. When like you said earlier, right? You had this beautiful description how you're doing it, and I know time in this session is limited. But if I understand you correctly, I mean, if people would love to, like, if they have already built that marketing engine and everything, but they don't have the predictability in the pipeline, and they would love to understand better how we are doing this, do we have like a 30-minute phone call or so linked under this video that people could use?
Sure.
That's the right answer.
Of course.
Yes. So, but it's interesting. Would you? I mean, there's this. Typically, you have this has not been built here effect, right? So most of the people are not super open to sharing all their despair and their challenges with other people. Why would you recommend someone to even talk to you or me or both of us before starting or going on with building their sales practice?
Yeah, I can take me again as an example here. If I'd imagine I had all those tools, I had all those techniques that I have now 6 years ago when I started at StarMind, I think my world would look different for sure. 1,000%. I was so inefficient. I didn't have a clue about customers, how they worked, and I didn't find out because I didn't ask. I presented, all these mistakes that people do. And to be honest, I think some sales do it throughout their career, like 30, 40 years in sales, and they still do it only that way. I think experience in sales, it could be that you have done it wrongly your whole life. Imagine if I did it as I did it the first 2 or 3 years at StarMind, I would still do it like this. I mean, I still wouldn't understand what it is to do sales, and you have to try different stuff, and you have to find out what could be your best approach. But I think there is a certain there are approaches, or there is certain boundaries you have to move in, and in these boundaries you still find, because your product fits more for these kind of people, you have to adjust that process a little bit, or you have to adjust it based on how customers approach you, based on you approach customers, for instance. But I think you have to move in these boundaries. And when I started at StarMind, I was out of everything. I just did, I didn't really, we didn't have a sales process, a clear sales approach. We didn't. And I would have absolutely loved to get that help back then. Really, I would have saved me so much time. It's just incredible. I mean, it's easy.
So if someone feels they don't have the blow off the roof sales process in place that delivers and delivers and delivers and delivers, they need to fence off new customers with a stick. That talking to us could save them years. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, I think.
And you would even share 1 or 2 tips in those 30 minutes that would, let's calculate. If it could save them months of a typical, their own sales work salary, right? So that they could save like tens of thousands of euros, right? But just getting 1 or 2 tips.
Yes, I can give you an example. When I started, we had 4 people doing the work I do alone now. We hired 4 interns, basically. We paid all of them, obviously. They were gathering data. They were gathering people, like they were gathering all our data, and then we targeted those people. And that alone I can do myself alone now. So
that helps and the other 3 could do the same. So you're now at 400% or something.
Exactly.
If you need it that much, right?
Yeah, if I need it that much, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I got to tell you, I would not have believed this when I was running my first company in my mid-20s or something, and I totally sucked at sales. I thought all these salespeople are a little crazy, and they're trying to convince you of stuff all the time. And when I started working with Michael Simon, that you know the guy very well, and when we started working and everything, my image of people in sales changed dramatically. It changed to a point where I think that people in sales are the only hope for some customers because they bring change, right? They bring impulses. And also my image about change, about sales changed. And I think more or less sales and marketing as a combined function in a modern organization are nothing but tools to communicate elegantly and tools that help people, other people, and we're talking about the prospect, the customer, help other people make the best possible decision. And that turns sales into a non-military function for me, right? Into something that is even has some tiny little friendly spiritual note to it, right? It's actually something that can be very helpful if it's done right, right? And I know you are someone who would never sell stuff to people they don't need, because in this recurring revenue business, it can only hurt you, right? You invest in them, you got to install everything. They use it for a year. They are pissed. They leave. You pay, right? So, and that is something that helps me really love this idea of being good and great at sales as a sport, because if you do it right, it directly translates into helping more people, helping more organizations be successful.
Yeah.
And see, time is almost up. Is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners and spectators?
One last thing, as you were saying, I would always try to learn from others. No matter what, if you start from scratch, if you're new into sales or whatever, if you're even already 10 years into sales, talk to other salespeople how they actually do it, and be open to maybe try something new. But talk to people, not only your customers, to find new use cases that you can sell your technology to new potential users or whoever, but also regarding your sales approach. Always talk, ask questions, try to understand before to be understood in general. Get out there and ask. That's my last advice, I guess. Thank you, Max, for the conversation. It was a pleasure, as always.
Thanks for taking the time, my dear good friend.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And for all of you in front of the screens, we didn't promise you this, but Patrick and I do have some beautiful polo shirts in the making. They feature a sales-made logo on the back. And book a session with us, one of these 30-minute calls if you want, and we will reward you with a sales-made T-shirt. It's nothing you can buy. It's something that you earn by showing that you are committed to developing that sales practice, by showing that you are committed to join our little sales-made tribe with Chief Patrick here. And and of course, we are bribing you into this because we want to get to know you better. We are very much interested in how you see these things, right? What are you experiencing? What are you missing? What are some of the challenges you are seeing that you need a tool for or help with? And thanks for enduring this. We appreciate your time. And let us know, drop a comment below if you think this was helpful. Then, and also if you want, just let us know what other topics you would like to learn about. Take care.
Take
Lots
care.
of success.
Bye.
Good hunting. Patrick, bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, Max. Thanks.